everybody, and welcome to the Talking City podcast. My name is Dan Murphy, and joining me, as ever, from the Manchester Evening News, because I forgot to say that bit, I am also from the Manchester Evening News, funnily enough, but you know that. Also with me, of course, is Mr. Joe Bray. Joe, how's it going?
Not too bad, thanks. Got me coffee, ready for a big drive to Bournemouth tomorrow, so all good.
Big trek, and you know we'll talk about that in due time. But City had another big trek, of course, in midweek, all the way to East Germany, where they faced RB Leipzig in the first leg of the Champions League last 16 tie. It finished 1-1, and it was quite an interesting game. And as the cliche goes, Joe, a match of two halves. City kind of dominated the first half, really controlled the match. A formation completely not what Guardiola said it would be in the first half, as part of the course. Went ahead through Riyad Mahrez's fine strike following Jack Grealish's assist. But in the second half, as is kind of becoming a little bit of a pattern following the weekend, the opposing team grew back into it a lot in RB Leipzig's case. Absolutely peppered the City goal for most of it and deservedly got an equaliser through Josko Gvardiol with 28 minutes to go. City had a few chances to win it themselves after that and grew back into the game at such, but all square after the first leg. Not the worst result in the world, Joe, but not the best either, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we said it on here. If you offered City a draw in that first leg, bring it back to the Etihad, we know how dangerous Leipzig are to beating Real Madrid at home and have a long sort of run of not losing at home. You'd have snapped the hand off for it. Like, it was a tricky game. And as Guardiola said after the game, if you thought City were going to go and win there 4 or 5-0, you were well mistaken. But the way the game went, it was such a controlled first half. It's probably one of the best 45 minutes we've seen from City, certainly since the World Cup, but maybe beyond that as well. It's a little bit disappointing that they then sort of relinquished control slightly, and the fact that, I'm sure we'll get onto, Guardiola didn't opt to change it and he didn't sort of go for the throat and try and counter. He sort of seemed to accept that, yeah, let's take a draw, let's bring it back to Manchester. And I can see why he's done that, but after the sort of highs of that first half, it was a really interesting sort of tactical first half. We were expecting, you know, does Bernardo stay at left back? He names what looks like a back four without any sort of troubles, with Nathan Ake on the left and Kyle Walker on the right. They warm up like that in the warm-up, and then come kick-off, Kyle Walker's racing up the right wing as a right winger. It's a back three. Bernardo Silva's not sort of patrolling the left-back area. He's defensive mid, and it's a completely new formation again. It's a similar system, but a new formation with the players that he had. So Guardiola, when he was asked, is it a back four, is Nathan Ake playing left back before the game, he had a bit of a smile and he was like, yeah, of course he is, yeah. And then come kick off, as we should have expected by now, it was not that simple, was it? But no, it was. I think game of two halves it sums it up. You don't want to use those cliches, do you? But it was remarkable how good City were in the first half and how good Leipzig were after the break.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually quite annoyed I didn't spot it, because like Guardiola's smile in that pre-match interview was beaming from here to here. I should have clocked it, because he actually had the cheek to say we always line up in a back four. I'm like, no, you don't. That's an absolute lie. But oh, bless him, it keeps us all on our toes. It's very interesting. I say the formation worked kind of wonders in that first half. City so controlling. I think you pointed out the formation just afforded so much space for Grealish, who took it. You used it to great effect when he kind of pressed to win the ball and set up that opener. His kind of fine form continues. But you know, you said that City relinquished control. I don't think they kind of had as much agency in it as that. I think like they didn't lose control. Leipzig wrestled it back. They came out, all guns blazing. It was an absolutely raucous atmosphere over in Leipzig, and they kind of, I think, did they bring Henrik on, Benjamin Henrik on either at half-time or just before it, and that they obviously, Marco Rosa obviously thought, oh, they are lining up in a back four, we won't really target that left side. Ake is a good defender, and they didn't. But when you notice that it's not the back four as they expected, it was more the back three, and there was a lot of space on that left with Ake in like kind of the left of the back three and having to kind of do both with Bernardo everywhere and Grealish kind of malaising down the left. There was clear space there to be exploited, and with the introduction of Henrik, they really did exploit it, and they should have scored long before they did. And the best chance was when Henrik was put through in that down that right side, had loads of space, and he dragged his shot wide. Like, it was smart from Leipzig. They spotted what City were doing, reacted accordingly, and it was the first half, as it tends to be with City, because when they are great, they tend to be boring just because it's all about control, keeping the ball. But it was a kind of an interesting game how they had the control, they took the lead, probably should have had more goals. But I think the second half emphasised how good the first half was, because Leipzig are not a poor team. They are no mugs. They have, as we talked about earlier this week, they have a lot of attacking talent, and Nkunku only came on off the bench. Then they had so much attacking talent already on the pitch. And I'd never even heard of this Benjamin Henrik beforehand, and he was brilliant, and especially in the last minute, as we'll touch on. So
cracking goalkeeper.
Exactly. So I don't think it's a case of City themselves throwing it away as much this time, more of they were up against a really good opponent, and you can't just expect to control really good opponents all matches.
No, and that's exactly what Guardiola said after the game. He said at half-time, if those players expected the game to go as it had done for the first 45 minutes, it wasn't going to happen. He said the manager was going to demand a response, the fans were going to demand a response. And yeah, like you say, Leipzig I think they pushed City back. So because they had more of the ball, I think they had about 24% possession in the first half, and then they actually had more possession than City in the second half. Because they had more of the ball, they pushed City back into a back four that they didn't want to play. So while it was a solid looking back four, they were still trying to play the system of the first half, which relied on Kyle Walker getting up the right, and it just wasn't quite working. So they sort of put City off balance a little bit by just going on the front foot again. Like you say, Henriks was quite a live wire on that right hand side, and it was it was a very good sort of tactical performance from both sides. I think it was, we like to see the chances going from end to end, but I think what we saw in Leipzig was two managers really sort of having a go at each other mentally and testing the tactics against each other. And sometimes we don't often see it as obviously as we did in Leipzig, but no, it was I think credit to Leipzig, as you say. And one of their midfielders, I forget the name, he came out after the game and said, all we needed to do, and we noticed in the first half, is that if we sort of put a bit of a physical presence on City, they don't like getting stuck in. I'll try and find the exact quotes, but he basically said if we sort of were a bit more aggressive with the ball, without the ball, City would sort of just be taken aback a little bit, and that would allow Leipzig to sort of take control of the game in that second half as they did. So maybe that's something for Guardiola to look at in the future. But no, I think we will keep coming back to the fact that all in all, a point away at Leipzig in the first leg isn't a bad result at all.
No, and especially when away goals aren't a factor anymore. There's not as much pressure. I know that City would have got an away goal anyway and would be in a better position had that rule still been in place. But there isn't much of an emphasis now on going away and getting a result as there used to be when the away goal was a factor. So, a 1-1 going to the Etihad, it's certainly in City's favour, but it's certainly finely poised. And as you say, Leipzig would have learned from that. They learned from City just in the first half and adapted to kind of hurt City. Well, I went well, thank them. What the hell? What does Pep do in response? I know the second leg is until 3 weeks away, and there's a lot of football between then. But kind of looking a little bit ahead, what do you kind of see City having to do to counteract that? Because surely you can't do the false left back again, knowing that Leipzig are prime to punish that if they do.
Well, if you listen to Guardiola, he's going to play 9 strikers, he said, because he wanted that control in the first leg, and he played probably more midfielders than he usually would. Yes, City will probably have to be a little bit more attacking in that second leg. That does mean sacrificing a little bit of defensive solidity, but City will have learnt from that. Last time Leipzig came to the Etihad, City put 6 goals past them. Yes, they conceded 3, but it was, if City do attack, they will get goals. And it's not only City who will have to come out, Leipzig will have to come out, and they'll have to do it at City. You can expect the crowd to be behind City, and home advantage does count a lot in the Champions League and having that second leg at home. So you would still consider City favourites. And just hearing Guardiola speak after the game, he was saying, yes, we can't compete with Leipzig or German sides in general when it comes to the transitions. They're a lot faster. So he knows where the issues lie he's now got 3 weeks to analyse that game. He's been given plenty of evidence to analyse in both halves of how the game went, and they will be able to sort of devise a plan that you would at the very least expect to get a goal and put the pressure on Leipzig.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we kind of delve into maybe a few of the negatives from the match, let's talk about the positives again, and they remain. Jack Grealish and well, he didn't play against Forest, but he did certainly here against RB Leipzig, keeping his fine record against scoring against them intact. Riyad Mahrez, it was a great goal, and I think one that really typifies Jack Grealish's real. I wouldn't go as far to say transformation, but almost kind of his full acclimatation to this City team. I think we all said before the season, like, every City attacker needs a year to really get accustomed to Guardiola's methods. It happened with Bernardo. It happened with Mahrez himself. So many. Haaland's done amazing to be scoring so many so quickly, hasn't it? But Grealish, you'd need a year to really get accustomed to it, and it maybe took a little bit longer. I think I was certainly critical after the Borussia Dortmund home match earlier. Well, October was it, I believe. When he was really poor, didn't get into the game at all. And then after that, there was a big response. But since the World Cup now, he just looks like he belongs in that team, which I think a lot of people never thought he would. I think a lot of people kind of were worried that he would lose that spark, that verve that made him such a kind of beguiling player to watch, so enchanting. But he still got that. I think there was one moment in that second half or maybe in the first half, where he got the ball and he just, within a second of getting it, he's kind of wriggling up past the defender with such quick feet, and then obviously customary getting absolutely poleaxed to the ground as it tends to happen to him. But to be winning the ball in like a press, where no one ever kind of associated Grealish with defensive work, but we've pointed it out a few times now. The Tottenham match, I think both Tottenham matches, wasn't it? Wasn't it the 4-2 when he took a bit of umbrage with the best thing that happened. He did was the sliding tackle. He wasn't best pleased with that, but we've seen the defensive work he's been putting in. He's putting in a lot of hard work, and to win the ball in a press high up the pitch, to then have the state of mind and the ability to pick out the perfectly weighted pass. I know it was kind of dummy helped on via Gundogan, but he played Mahrez through, and then we'll talk about Mahrez in a minute. But before, and Grealish, I think he's scored or assisted in the last 3 games now, and he's been City's most consistent performer since the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's gone down as Gundogan's assist. I disagree with that, because I don't think if he got a touch, it wasn't meaningful. He meant to sort of step over it.
The goal doesn't get made if it's not Grealish, does it?
Exactly, yeah. I think if we give it to Grealish on this podcast, we can sort of support the points that we're going to make, because yes, he got more space in the formation. The fact that Kyle Walker was the widest right player meant that Riyad Mahrez was playing slightly inside. That attracted in the first half about 3 or 4 Leipzig defenders and defensive midfielders, and as a result, that gave Jack Grealish just a lot more space on the other side. Now I think it's 7 or 8 starts in a row now for Grealish. Obviously, Phil Foden has been injured for most of those, but he's got a run in the team. He's got a confidence now that he is going to keep his place. And Guardiola said that if Foden's getting back in the team, it's on the right-hand side in competition with Mahrez. So Grealish knows that left spot is his. He's deserved it. He's earned it. He's played well for a long time now. Now he's adding the goals and assists. As we say, even if he doesn't officially get that assist, he's the one who's made it. It's not the first time. It's the World Cup. He's sort of been aware and pounced on a defensive mistake and made a goal. It happened at Leeds as well. And it was just sort of a result of confidence, I think. I'm not sure Jack Grealish a year ago would have maybe sort of pounced on that mistake, and B, made such a direct sort of run and contribution and pass. He would have maybe played it safe and played it wide. Instead, he's played it towards two attacking players making a run, and it's resulted in a very good goal. So no, I think we're going to bust ourselves silly talking about Grealish, but he's playing very, very well at the moment. And if Guardiola thinks he's undroppable, I would agree, because he's playing consistently. He's keeping defenders on their toes. He's running at them now. That's what he's adding to his game that he hasn't always had, even at the start of the season. He's now starting to run at defenders again, and that's the Jack Grealish that City signed from Aston Villa. So if he's taken a year to add all the sort of tactical discipline and instructions of the system that Guardiola requires, and he's now bringing back that sort of running, and he's starting to have shots which people have been crying out for. You hear every time he gets on the ball at the Etihad, fans are crying for him to shoot, and he'll always play the simple ball. But now he's starting to have a bit more confidence to take that shot, make the pass, rather than just play it back to another blue shirt, and he's getting goals and assists as a result.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it was necessarily the process of adding the more defensive and off the ball and tactical stuff to his game. He's obviously a very intelligent footballer. He was doing that last season. It wasn't exactly the prettiest or the most shining matches or the most exciting that you want to see from 100 million signing, but he was doing what Guardiola wanted him when he was playing. He had that already, but now I feel he's been able to combine that with the attacking play, the exciting dribbling, the winning of the free kicks, the making decisive contributions, which he may have struggled with, kind of doing both simultaneously, combining. I think you summed it up perfectly there, that last year he was making the safe pass all the time, and maybe that's what he thought was wanted of him in a game where control, for a manager who stresses the need for control so often. But I think Guardiola's going to reckon many times he wants him to be a bit more adventurous, doesn't he? And I think he's finally finding that balance now, and it's paying off big time for City. And a player who found that balance long ago and is probably hitting finally hitting back to his best after a slow start to the season. Mahrez, a fine finish, a really clinical finish. I think we'll talk about City not taking the chances momentarily, but when Mahrez scored this, I was like, oh, maybe City are finally being clinical. I'm pretty sure it was the first shot on target. If not, it was definitely the first proper clear-cut chance, and it was expertly dispatched, and he's continuing, as you say, the rights. Foden's kind of, that's the spot he's competing for, but Mahrez isn't giving that up without any fight either.
Yeah, I don't think it was the first shot on target. I think Diaz had a header that went straight at the goalkeeper, but it was the first sort of clear opening in front of goal that you would have expected them to score, and he did. And I think he's scoring a lot of goals. He was scoring a lot since the World Cup, and then maybe 2 or 3 games where it went off the boil and Phil Foden comes back in, but he was sat on the bench at Nottingham Forest. You could see him. He wasn't sat on the bench. He was sort of sat on the wall, sort of itching to get on at Forest, and he wasn't given that chance. But he came back. Guardiola said Foden was dropped because Mahrez is playing well, and he was fresher as well. And I think he took that chance. It was really interesting to see how he fitted in that system. We so often see him get the ball as the widest player. He's then either got to wait for the fullback to overlap him, or he's got to put a cross in or play it back himself. This time there was someone there. Kyle Walker was always there because he was playing essentially as a right winger, and Mahrez could sort of occupy that space between the fullback and the centre back, and he just looked so dangerous, and the defence couldn't cope. They just didn't know what to do with him. So his run inside for the goal was because he was in that position, and he was sort of playing between those 2 defenders who didn't know whose job it was to pick him up, and he was just allowed a free run into the centre of the box. But even before that, he was just his positioning. He could make a dart into the box with the ball. He could feed Walker on the outside. He had Bernardo running up to support him inside. It was a system that really sort of played to his strengths, I think. Because when he gets the ball, Guardiola always says, doesn't he, that he's not the fastest to play. He's not the most direct. When you have Grealish and Mahrez on the wings, it's slower. It's more for control rather than getting to the byline and putting a cross. It can do that, but it's not his most natural sort of in. So having someone on the outside to do that, I don't think Kyle Walker is necessarily the answer. His crossing wasn't amazing at Leipzig, but his pace and his position always there. It allowed Mahrez to have that a little bit more space and just want to do something with it. And he got his goal, and if that's a solution that City could use in the future, just to free Mahrez up a little bit more, and as I say before, draw a couple more defenders in to give Grealish space, I think that's probably the best we've seen both of them as a pair, just because they were given the space in the system to do what they could do. And then we saw in the second half, when Kyle Walker was back, he was forced sort of back into his right back position. Grealish and Mahrez didn't have that space again. They were sort of having to play as they used. Also, Mahrez was still trying to play inside, and just they were swallowed a little bit and didn't have that freedom. But in the first half, it was a system that really, really played to their strengths.
Well, we'll bring part 1 of the Talking City podcast to a close there. We'll be back in just a moment when we'll dive into more detail in the match, and we'll talk about Ederson, Erling Haaland, and much, much more. Don't go anywhere. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Now, Joe, on the last episode, we kind of went in quite detail on this Ederson debate that's been raging, and you kind of saw both sides of the argument in Leipzig. The duality of the goalkeeper in the second half. Obviously, Leipzig came out of the traps firing, and we're all over City and had loads of opportunities. But Ederson, first of all, he saved the first shot on target against him right at the end of the first half, so that was a plus. But a lot of chances came Leipzig's way. Now, they weren't the best chances. I'd say of the saves he made, one was brilliant. One was probably, but I wouldn't say any of them were ones you wouldn't expect him to save. But the one I'm referring to was about on the 63rd minute. Andre Silva kind of dribbled his way into the box, and from a tight angle, yes, but from quite close, absolutely whacked the ball in Ederson's direction, and he was out quickly. He had a big hand to it and battered it away. There was one good save he made from distance that was going towards the top corner. I think it was that actually led to the corner which they scored from, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he made a lot of good saves, and he kind of answered those critics where, City can control, and then when they need Ederson, he's not there. He doesn't make the saves. He did. I don't actually know how many shots Leipzig got on target, but it certainly seemed that Ederson had 3 or 4, maybe even 5 or 6 good saves to make. But then the issue came with the goal, where he did kind of get lost coming off his line, almost shrunk under the shadow of the kind of absolutely massive Josko Gvardiol. But he was even the only one, as Ruben Diaz was also out jumped there. And then obviously Gvardiol headed home. Now, it was a bullet header. I feel like it might have gone in regardless of where Ederson was, but that certainly added more fuel to the fire of him not being that good. It's a debate that doesn't seem to be going away, and if anything, kind of picking up steam a bit here. But I don't know. Yeah, it was a bit of a mistake, but he kept City in the game beforehand, and they would have probably lost if it wasn't for him.
I think it was a game that will support your argument, whichever side of the fence you're on, because he saved his first shot on target. I've never agreed with that argument that's gone against him, that he keeps conceding his first shot on target, because the goals in question that have been sort of levelled against him, I would say only one is potentially his fault, and even then it shouldn't have got to him in the first place. But yeah, he saved that shot on target. He kept out a really dangerous low cross. The Andre Silva one was just a good piece of goalkeeping as well. He dives high to his right to keep out a shot. I think it was Soboslai, might be wrong, but it was that they're the sort of headline saves that fans have been asking for. So if you're on the sort of pro Ederson camp, you're saying, look at him there, he's doing what he needs to do, and he's proving reliable. And then the corner comes over, and he goes to sort of meet it, and then realises it's too high, and then he's just sort of stuck in no man's land. I don't think he would have got it anyway. There are some arguments. There's a sort of still image that looks like Gvardiol is really pushing down on Diaz. I think when you actually look at the replay in moving time, which is what referees do, I don't think that you can say it's a foul. I think the calls for a foul were pretty sort of desperate. I think it was a very fair goal in my opinion. But you look at the goalkeeper and he's just a little bit lost, and you think, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a debate that's going to go on and on. He's got another game against Bournemouth to see what he can do. I don't think Guardiola will drop him. I think, yes, Stefan Ortega will come in the FA Cup against Bristol City, but then he'll get sort of dropped to the bench again, because that's what happens. I think Guardiola trusts Ederson. There was a couple of moments as well that, again, back up the claim that he brings far more to the City system than shot stopping, which is just his calmness under pressure, especially in the second half. Leipzig have got a really sort of strong press on City's defence, and without Ederson, they would have conceded a couple of goals. I'm looking at Real Madrid against Liverpool. Both goalkeepers conceded a goal because they sort of dithered on the ball and the strikers pushing them. Ederson has done that in the past, but the amount of times he's under pressure and he just calmly flicks the ball away. I'm in the pro Ederson camp. I'm not sort of subscribing to the sort of the argument that he cost City, but it was another mixed. Let's say it was a mixed performance from him.
Well, there was another example of that as well in United's win over Barcelona on Thursday. I mean, De Gea, he's one of the keepers. Yeah, he's one of the keepers that City fans have been saying, look at the saves he makes, and in fairness, once again, he made some great saves against Barcelona, but at one point, he just booted the ball straight at 3 players. Like, the pass, there was no player where he kicked the ball to even it be a reasonable pass to make. He just booted it straight to 3 Barcelona players, and they were very lucky not to concede. So I think if you look at, and I say Alisson, he's obviously the one that's often, at least in the Premier League, compared most closely to Ederson in terms of being able to play on the ball, and obviously both being Brazilian and whatnot. But his mistake was hilariously bad. I know Loris Karius is a bit like the ghost at the feast at the minute. As soon as he's back in the public consciousness for the first time in 5 years, every goalkeeper goes to pot. But Ederson does what no other keeper, apart from, I can only think of 2, and that is Neuer and Ter Stegen, who are capable of doing what he does on the ball, coming out, being so comfortable for his defenders to push high. And no keeper suits City as well and the world. And again, find me one, fair enough. And as I said a couple of days ago, Jamie Trafford's just got Bolton to Wembley. So maybe he's the future. No, he definitely is the future. What am I saying? He's a brilliant. But he's not ready now, and he's not going to be ready for quite a bit, I imagine. And Ederson's got a lot of life in him yet. So I don't think he'll be going anywhere anytime soon, that's for sure. Let's kind of talk about Erling Haaland now. Not to hoist another boring and tired and worn out debate about him after the other one has just kind of ended to the extent of him being found, or City adapting to him. But we'll talk about how he just wasn't passed to in a moment. But what I want to talk about, and he's kind of going through this and that, but what I want to talk about is that when he finally was found, the one time, and it was Jack Grealish, of course, who did it, he was slid in and he went through, he powered past his defender, and he was in on goal, and you'd bet your life, in the great words of Ray Hudson, you'd bet you're beating hard to score, but you'd be dead. He was through on goal and he dragged his shot wide, and you're thinking, wow, you should be scoring that. And then a minute later, Leipzig equalised, and it was quite similar to the Forest game where the chance was even more. Well, both of them were even more of an absolute sitter, and he somehow misses. Now, I'm not saying he's not bad. Obviously, he's amazing. He's got 32 goals already. It's ridiculous. But, and it's a big but, Haaland was signed, as we all know, to win that Champions League, to be the man who can score in those decisive moments, to the gilt-edged chances in games where you might only get one. This is just not to disrespect Leipzig, but you'd expect City to beat Leipzig when you're coming up against Real Madrid or your Bayerns, or well, probably not PSG because they're going to get knocked out with looks of things. But your big European sides, when the margins for error is so close, when opportunities are rarer, when the pressure is at its absolute highest, Haaland's meant to be the guy to score in those moments, to do what City players and City have struggled to do so often, and just get over the line when they need it most. And it's a small sample size, and I'm sure he scored with his first chance in many other games. But in these last 2 games, when City have had their backs against the wall a little bit and needed to kill games off and ensure the victory, he has missed when they haven't been the easiest. Well, the chances were easy itself, but the situation wasn't that easy. And I'm a little bit worried, like, the stakes aren't even at the highest yet, and should City advance past Leipzig, which is by no means a guarantee, and should they get to any finals and whatnot, or they need a goal to clinch themselves in the title race when they go and play Arsenal in April or whatever, is there a little bit of concern that he won't convert those chances if they do come? I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, and for the sake of having to write an opinion, it's got to be done. But I don't know. I've seen it twice in 2 games. Maybe it's just a coincidence, of course. 3's a pattern, but I'm just a little bit worried about that.
See, I look at that chance against Leipzig, and yes, he was through on goal, but he had, was it Guardiola pushing him wide?
Or Robin, one of the 2.
Yeah, so he still had quite a lot to do. The only way you could go was literally forward rather than sort of angled in towards the goal. So the angle to find the bottom corner was sort of decreasing with every sort of stride. I don't think it was the easiest chance. And the finish that he gave, you could see he was trying to find the bottom corner, but it was very hard to find that bottom corner. It seemed to me it was more out of frustration. He was getting very, very frustrated before that because the amount of runs he was making that were just going ignored. And yes, Guardiola said after the game he wanted control. He wanted City to find Haaland, but also he didn't want to. He was very wary of the transitions that Leipzig could do with the pace that they had. So maybe that's why City weren't playing the risky ball which you do get with Haaland. Now, a lot of people would say put it in his direction and he's probably going to get it because of his strength. But there were a couple of times where he did get sort of played through and Guardiola just shrugged him off because he is a very good, strong, fast defender. I wouldn't say that was the easiest chance that he's had, but after sort of 60 minutes of getting absolutely nothing, I think he touched the ball, was it 20 times in the whole game, and he only touched the ball once in the opposition box, which was that chance. You're sort of relying on him to do something, and it's highlighted just because he was just sort of so out of the game. I wonder if that and the Forest miss were frustration, because we know against Forest he didn't get service either. He had another big, strong, fast defender at him, not giving him a moment's peace. Is it just a case of an hour of getting no service and getting wound up by an opposition that he's snatching at chances? I don't know. I can think of quite a few chances earlier in the season. Yes, it's in the box and City are dominating, but he's gone 20, 30 minutes without having a sniff, and suddenly it's in the box and he comes alive. But he didn't get... He had one chance that was given to him to run onto that we've spoken about, and I don't think he had any that was sort of played to him in the box. The crosses that came in, for as dominant as City were, the crosses were pretty poor at Leipzig, and that's where Haaland sort of thrives. So yes, you can look at the last two games. You can say City have had 35 shots over those games, 9 of which on target, and they've only scored 2 goals. That's a bit of a concern, and that is when, as you say, City need Haaland to score goals. But I think it's a whole team issue in that if Haaland isn't scoring, as we discussed last week, City needs to find another plan B, and that sort of win rate of when Haaland doesn't score, that's gone down to 30% now. It's another example of Haaland not scoring. And I think he scored 4, I've written it down, he scored 4 in the 3 goals immediately after the World Cup, but he's got 5 in his next 11, and he's got only 1 in his last 6. So if you offered City at the start of the season 32 goals in his first 32 games, no one's complaining. He scored in 60% of his matches. That's brilliant. But I think it's because he scored so many at the start of his career at City. He's only scored in like 3 games of the last 11 now. I think that's why there's a few sort of questions. And when you have performances like Leipzig where he's just not involved and he's getting frustrated when teammates aren't passing him the ball, I think that just exacerbates all the sort of arguments that are going around. But again, he's not gone more than 3 games without scoring a goal for City in his career so far. Bournemouth are up next, then Bristol City. He's a player who doesn't dwell on these missed chances for long, is he?
No, absolutely not. And I think you're kind of right. It can often be a sense of kind of perception, and I think you see it so often with teams. You know, a team will start a season really well. You know, let's say a Fulham this season or Brighton, they started so well, and European contention. There's talk of them, you know, doing this and that, and then if they drop away. As an example, I'm not saying this would happen in their case, but it has happened to other teams. If they drop away, fans will be like, "Oh, that's rubbish. That's such a disappointing season. Oh, we should have got. I can't believe we've not qualified for Europe, whatever." But if they had done it the other way, started a bit poor and ended the season really well and got up to 9th, you'd be like, "Oh, what a great season! Absolutely smashed that." Because obviously there's recency bias, and you know the last thing that happens is what you remember the most. And if it's a sense of achievement and joy, then you're buzzing. If it's a sense of failure and dread, then obviously you're not. So it is a sense of perception. As you say, Haaland was kind of a victim of his own success, scoring so often at the start of the season, and now any striker, as I've said, I think I've said numerous times, any striker goes through lulls and kind of drier patches. It's bound to happen. Just because he's scored so often and he's still scoring at a great rate doesn't mean it's not a crisis when he doesn't score. And I'd definitely not subscribe to that. I think he's obviously brilliant, but that's some kind of my concern. Is just that if he's getting frustrated and he's letting it maybe affect his finishing, he needs to maybe like chill out a bit. I guess I know he seems like the most chill Premier League footballer going, so I don't know how angry he does tend to get. But as you say, when you say like he doesn't score in City, only a 30% win rate when he doesn't score, and I'm kind of looking at some of the games he doesn't score in. Now, obviously, he has scored against Arsenal. He's got a hat trick against United, and he scored in the win and the comeback win against Tottenham. But the games when he hasn't scored in, a lot of them are kind of against big teams. It's the defeat to Tottenham, the defeat to United, the Chelsea didn't score against, even though City did win that one. The defeat to Liverpool, the first one of the season, the Community Shield to Liverpool, and now in this Champions League match, Arsenal in the FA Cup as well. And he's not scored in some. I don't know how much of a point I can actually make this, because he has done it as well. It's not like he can't, but he's not scored in big games, and sometimes City have been costed already. Now, it's not kind of costly to such a massive extent yet, because obviously there's loads of season to go, and City's still in the FA Cup, etc., and still in the title race, of course. But when the margin for error is even smaller and the punishment is immediate, when this Champions City could feasibly go out, and Haaland missed a great chance, and he's been brought in. As everyone knows, City want to win the Champions League more than anything else. It's the thing that's proved elusive. It's what I think Guardiola himself has admitted. Has he admitted he'd be a failure? Has he been against that? I'm pretty sure he said he'd be classed as a failure at least. Yeah, he's all over it showing it. But I think everyone knows that Champions League is what City want more than anything. And Haaland's going to have to... City are going to get frustrated when they're going to play better teams. If they get Madrid, I mean, look at Madrid against Liverpool. There's going to be points in that game where they are left frustrated and Haaland's might take the game and City can't find him. He has to take those chances when they come his way, I think. And, well, not just him. City need to be more clinical all over, of course. But I just see it and I'm like, he'll end this debate immediately. He'll go and score an hat-trick in the second leg. But I just wonder if there's a little bit of concern of him maybe going missing a bit when City need him. I know it's might be ridiculous.
I wouldn't say he's going missing. I mean, the games
not being found,
there,
both things.
Yeah, it's a sort of a combination of a lot of things, and sometimes you've just got to say they've been playing good teams. Chelsea have been all over the shop, but they have very good defenders like Thiago Silva. You've mentioned Liverpool, United, Arsenal, RB Leipzig, games that he hasn't scored in. Tottenham. They're all good teams with good systems, and as we've spoken about before, it's not always just Haaland against his defender. It's about the sort of press against City to stop the balls getting to Haaland in the first place. And I would point to teams like Brentford and Nottingham Forest who did that very well, who also stopped him scoring. So sometimes you've just got to say the opposition did quite a good job on City's tactics of getting it to Haaland. Now that also comes back to the point of City need to find a plan B when it's not working and they can't get Haaland in the game, and can other players take advantage of that sort of focus on Haaland to score a goal themselves. The record of 1 goal a game when Haaland doesn't score isn't going to win you a lot of games, because City have shown that they are capable of conceding at the moment. But no, I think you are right in the sense that City have brought him to score in big games. He has scored in some good big games. He's also probably got to hold his hands up and say that the defence did a good job on him in other big games. But I'd say let's judge him after the second leg, because he's also a player who learns a lot, and he will learn a lot from playing against Guardiola and Orban, and City will learn from when the right moments are to play him in and not. So for all we know, he can go and score the winner in a tight second leg, and he's been hailed the hero again. Look at the Dortmund game at home. It was a tight game. He comes up with a moment of magic where he flings himself up in the air and scores with that flying sort of boot into the top corner. He's not a player who stays down for long, and I think you're picking at sort of problems that don't always exist when he scored 32 and 32, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the way it's kind of have to be sometimes with City, because they are so brilliant at times. You are kind of looking at minor details to analyse, because otherwise it'd be pretty boring and we don't have much to talk about. I'm not doubting Haaland's ability in the slightest. I have no doubt he will shut me up and go score an hat-trick against Leipzig or something like that. But I just have a vision in my mind of City in like the semi-final against Madrid or something, and he misses the chance. I could just picture it so clearly. But I think
you can also see a scenario where they're in a semi-final against Madrid and he scores the winner, and that's the difference from last season. There's two sides to the Haaland argument, isn't there?
That's it. Yeah, that's why he's been brought in, and can he do it? That is kind of the crux of my question. I'm intrigued to see if he can, and I hope we do soon. But as I say, you'll have to get past 2 for that to happen, and you could see during the game, I don't think he's ever got that quite exasperated at people not passing to him in that match. Like, so many times he was making run after perfect run, and either the pass didn't find him or they wasn't even attempted. Like, why don't City just get the ball to him a bit more? You know, you could tell me about control and keeping the ball and not taking risks or whatever, but as I've said, as I've said numerous times, man, the risk, getting rid of risk is being 3-0 up and just giving your striker the ball to smash through and score. Like, it's not Haaland's fault that he's only had one chance that he has to take and he can't do it. It's because maybe getting more chances, get the ball to him. He's there, he's making the runs, you know, just thread the ball through. It's not like we're asking him to, it's not like we're asking Pep to go full on Sam Allardyce and just boot the ball up, you know, and there'd be nothing wrong with that anyway. You know, Ederson's got great delivery. Why is he not just mixing it up every now and then and just having Ederson just bang the ball over the top and have him run through? I feel like there's not that much risk in mixing it up every now and then.
Yeah, and the one that Haaland got visibly frustrated at, it looked so obvious. I think it was Gundogan. There was so much space just to thread it in a general area, and you knew Haaland would run onto it and most likely have a shot. Again, I think it comes back to the same thing we said after Nottingham Forest. He's still making those runs. If he was not making the runs, then the players who are guilty of not finding him will be able to say, well, he's not making the run. Haaland is always making those runs. He's made it from the first game he played for City, and he will continue to do that. So it's up to City and up to Guardiola if they want to change and sort of play that risk a bit more. But I think one thing is for certain, that Haaland isn't going to stop doing that and keeping the defenders on their toes. So again, it's less of a problem if he's still doing it and he's still making the space and still creating the chances. If he wasn't doing anything and just standing in the middle, then there'd be a bit more cause for concern. But it's an easier problem to fix when you know that Haaland's still going to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's a game City, you know, could have won and probably should have had an even greater opportunity to win right at the death. I mean, a corner is worked by Mahrez and Gundogan. Mahrez gets a better angle to cross it in. Rodri meets it with a header and he heads it towards the aforementioned Benjamin Henrik, and he can only be described as pushes the ball away. I don't get how it wasn't even looked at by VAR. Apparently, what I've heard contrasting reports, but Peter Walton on BT Sport said he has a monitor which UEFA used to check VAR and it didn't go to this decision. I don't get how it's not given. It's for some of the handballs I have seen given. Again, I don't understand the rules anymore. For some of the handballs I've seen given in this blooming sport, and that one wasn't, when his hands are at his, maybe the argument is his hands are in front of his body and he'd hit his body anyway, I don't know. But at one point he literally pushes him to the side and literally like almost got control of the ball. It was like volleyball. So I am absolutely baffled how it wasn't a penalty.
Yeah, well, if Peter Walton says it wasn't looked at and Pep Guardiola says it was, I think I'll trust Pep Guardiola on that one. He's, Guardiola said it was looked at, so and the referees decided not. I don't understand it. I think it was on par of Luis Suarez against Ghana at the World Cup in terms of pushing the ball away to stop it going in a direction that the defender didn't want it to go in. At the time, I didn't see it watching on the feed, but you know, it takes one replay, and surely VAR need only one look at that to say, yeah, go on, ref, go and have a look at that, because he's literally punched the ball away. It doesn't matter if his hands are within the silhouette of the body. When you're extending them to punch the ball away, that's handball. That's a deliberate act, and it's a definite penalty. So I can see why Guardiola was annoyed. I think it was funny that he said, we know what happened, we didn't see it again, but we know what happened, we know what happened in the past, and we know what will happen again. Read into that what you will. I would, again, though, come back to the fact that City will be frustrated that was a turning point in the match and that was a decisive decision. They should have had that tie. They should have led in that tie, let's be honest, and they should be taking a lead into the second leg. The fact that it comes down to a contentious penalty or a missed Haaland chance, they'll be disappointed, just like they were disappointed at Forest when they had the chances to win the game.
Yeah, well, one man who wasn't disappointed with the result was Guardiola. You know, we talked earlier, he kept things interesting with his pre-match lies about his team, but afterwards he was quite interesting as well. He went all Phil Brown on the pitch, gathering his players around. He didn't quite get them sat down and pointing fingers at them. So, Gundogan won't have to do the Jimmy Bullard celebration anytime soon. But he did gather his players round on the pitch. I don't think everyone was there, but there was a good handful, 6 or 7 or 8. And as we've kind of learned afterwards from Guardiola himself and Mahrez, the point was he wanted, City players were obviously disappointed with the result. They thought they should have won, but the manager wasn't. As we've kind of discussed, Leipzig are a great team, and a draw in the first leg away is by no means a disaster. So he told them all to kind of, chin up. You played really well, not much of an issue. Go and thank the fans, and that's what they did. And as well as that, Guardiola didn't make a substitution. Now, I thought this wasn't as rare as it was, but I have seen conflicting things. It was like the first time he's actually ever done it in the Premier League and Champions League. I could have sworn he's not made a sub in the past, but maybe he's just made because we've had this discussion before during the 5 sub kind of debate when the Premier League didn't have it during the COVID days. And we was all saying, well, why do you want 5 subs? You never use it, and that was kind of asked of him again here. A strange one, regardless of how often he's done it or not. Strange one that he didn't do it here. Gundogan was asked about it. He said, it's the manager's decision. We can deal with it. Gundogan himself thought everyone was playing well. Guardiola was asked about it. He said he considered bringing Foden on, but I'm sick of this word. But wanted control of the midfield. Honestly, I'm so sick of control. Control me to stop talking about it. But an interesting one, nevertheless, that he didn't make a sub.
Yeah, I was looking at this on about the sort of 70, 80-minute mark at Nottingham Forest, because he'd not brought anyone on then, and you could sense that maybe Forest could nick something. And I thought he'd done it earlier this season, but as far as I could go back until Forest then scored and I had to rewrite my entire pieces, I couldn't find it. So I don't think he's done it this season, or certainly not for a few months. Or he might have done what he did at Forest and just waited until the last couple of minutes to make changes. His explanation was the C word, the control word. He wanted Bernardo to continue sort of offering that protection in front of the defence. He said Gundogan was playing well in midfield with Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish. You do get sort of more possession, and City were under the caution in quite a lot of that second half. Leipzig were pressing quite high, and with Grealish and Mahrez, you do get players who will put their foot on the ball and keep possession, and Grealish especially will attract fouls and sort of just take the pressure off a little bit. So while he said he was going to bring Foden on after the goal, then City had a couple of chances, and you can understand that explanation. He also said to fans who sort of aren't happy with that he's the boss basically, and he told the players to be proud of their performance. Yes, they were disappointed, but Guardiola was basically putting it in perspective that they've done well to get a good result in the first leg, take it back to the second one, be happy with it. And the message we've been getting from the last 2 games, yes, the fans are frustrated, yes, they've created a lot of chances, and compared to the opposition who've had about a third of the chances, if that, and still managed to score 2 goals, Guardiola's still being happy with the performances. Compare it to his big rant the other month after they beat Tottenham and scored 4 goals. He's happier with the attitude now and the sort of application. So he clearly feels like there's not much of an issue. The results will turn, the goals will start flowing again, and that's what he's been trying to impress on his players. But his main message was it's a 2-leg game, so he must have thought, let's not risk going behind and making it a more difficult chance in Manchester. Let's take the draw, bring it back, and sort of build on from that.
Well, it's certainly set to be a fascinating second leg, but we'll turn our attentions back towards the Premier League in part 3. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Joe, another away day on Saturday, as you mentioned earlier on, a big old trip down to Bournemouth. I might add the opportunity to speak to Pep yet. The press conference will be later on in Friday, but you mentioned there the goals will hopefully flow, and this feels like the sort of game where they certainly could. It was City's second match of the season, I do believe. This year, they won 4-0. Haaland didn't score, of course, but did win. He did get the assist for Gundogan. Bournemouth struggling just outside the relegation zone, down in 17th. Like if we have a similar story as we have in the last 2 games against the Cherries, I think then there's a bit more cause for concern, I'd wager.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will be the same game as we saw at the Etihad. It's a long way. Guardiola went out of his way to mention that City had done a lot of travelling recently. He said they were at Arsenal, then 3 days later they were away at Nottingham Forest, then 3 days later away at Leipzig, and now they're down in Bournemouth, and after that they've got to go to Bristol City. There's a lot of away games there, a lot of travelling.
And if it takes City 4 hours to get to London, it's going to take them at least 7 to get to Bournemouth, I think.
This is it. I'll take 7 when I'm driving down tomorrow, to be honest. But I think it will be more difficult than the home game just because of a smaller stadium, a stadium that City don't really play in terms of size and sort of atmosphere. Bournemouth will be fighting for their lives. I think City should win. City have to be winning these kind of games against relegation sides. But if they go there thinking they've won, potentially like they did at Nottingham Forest, they might come unstuck. If they come back without a win, they will be very disappointed, though. I think with Bristol City coming up next, Guardiola can stay relatively strong. He's not really got that many options. We'll find out whether Kevin De Bruyne and Aymeric Laporte are sort of recovered from their illness that kept them out of the Leipzig trip. But their absence was really sort of felt on the bench. When Guardiola was looking to bring players on at Leipzig, we talked about the substitutions. He only really had Foden and Julian Alvarez to bring on. Yes, Calvin Phillips and Sergio Gomez were there, but they're not going to change the game. And then you've got Cole Palmer, Maximo Peroni, and then 2 youth team players in Shea Charles and Alex Robertson. The options to bring on are fairly limited, and therefore the options to rotate in terms of the Bournemouth game are also quite limited. So having De Bruyne and Laporte back is kind of necessary, really. We'll find out, and we'll bring you whatever Guardiola says on the Manchester Evening News website. But no, I think it will be another intriguing game. City should win, but it's another one. If you offered them a rubbish performance and a 1-0 win, they'd snap your hands off it, I think.
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued with that lineup. As you say, even if Laporte and De Bruyne are back, hopefully they're fully fit and fully recovered. But even if they are, you can imagine they're probably maybe not the fittest at the minute. Having, if they've got the lurgy I've had last few weeks, tell you what, they'll be coughing up green balls of sludge forever. So I wish them all the best. But I kind of see this match as quite an interesting opportunity for Phil Foden. Now, Guardiola spoke at his pre-Leipzig press conference in quite a lot of detail about a lot of things. Blimey, it was hard to transcribe at points, but I thought his stuff about Foden in midfield, while kind of treading a similar line that we've heard before, were quite interested in the fact that he knows he can do it in there. He compared his moment when he went through against Forest and then kind of tripped over the ball to Lionel Messi, of all players. He says he's got the skills to play in midfield, but he's still young and needs to learn not more the stuff off the ball than on the ball, the positioning, the timing, the decision making and whatnot. But I've kind of written today for going up tomorrow, like, I think it's quite harsh because, like, you can't really learn those things intrinsic to the position, right? Playing in the position a lot. And obviously he has a lot, but he's not done it much often for the last 2.5 years now. But if De Bruyne's fit or not, that midfield, Gundogan, Bernardo, and, well, Bernardo might be playing at left back again, who knows, and Rodri, they've played a lot of matches, and even if De Bruyne is fit, that still only leaves one person for rotation. Phillips potentially coming in. But I wonder if this is an intriguing opportunity for Foden to get a game in midfield. Now, I know City need to win. Arsenal once again play earlier than them, but they're against Leicester, who, despite losing to United, are kind of hitting a bit of form and look good with James Maddison. So by no means an easy game. So City could have a huge opportunity by the time they played Bournemouth. But I see this as a game. I don't think it will happen. But if I was Guardiola, I wouldn't. Obviously not. But it seems like a good opportunity to me to give Foden a kind of a fairly low stake. Maybe the Bristol game would be this as well. But a fairly low stakes match in midfield to show that he keeps saying he will do it, he can do there, but we've not actually seen any sort of effort to put him there in recent years.
He's played there in the Cup, so I think if Guardiola is going to play Foden in midfield in the next week, and I think he will, I think it'll be at Bristol City rather than Bournemouth. You say it's a low-stakes game. I'd disagree slightly. After the Forest draw, I think City need to sort of keep that pressure up on Arsenal, and I'm frantically trying to find out who Arsenal have got at the weekend. But regardless of that, well, yeah, that's a potential opportunity for Arsenal to slip up again, especially away from home. So I think City will stay relatively strong. having De Bruyne in the port back will help just keep people fresh if possible. But no, I think these 2 games is probably an opportunity for Foden to get that sort of rhythm back that Guardiola's been looking for, and then after that it's Newcastle at home, which is going to be a relatively difficult game because they've fallen off a little bit, but Newcastle have been one of the best teams of the season and they caused City a lot of problems. So I think he'll go strong. I don't think he'll play Foden in midfield, but I suppose if he did, having Bernardo in the sort of left back I saw someone describe it as a false left back the other day, and I quite like that because it essentially is what the role is. If Bernardo's in that false left back role, it gives Foden just a bit more defensive protection in midfield to go and play the attacking midfield role that he could excel in. But again, I think it'll be Bristol City that he does that rather than Bournemouth.
Well, it's certainly set to be another interesting weekend. City certainly need a win, and of course you can follow all the action over on manchestereveningnews.co.uk/Manchester City for all their expert analysis and breaking news and all the lovely content you could possibly desire. So thank you everyone very much for listening to the Talking City podcast. If you want to watch this in a living colour and see our lovely mugs, you can go over to our YouTube channel. It's Manchester Evening News -Man City. You can get our Twitter at Man City MEN, and of course we're also on Facebook, Manchester Evening News -Man City. We'll be back later on next week to discuss whatever goes down on the South Coast and look forward to that midweek. Midweek. Get that in your calendars. A new step, a new bold new future for the FA Cup, but another long trip down south to Bristol for Manchester City. We'll be looking forward to that as well, and all the news that comes out in between. So until then, everyone, this has been the Talking City podcast. It's goodbye for now. Ta-ra.